and welcome to the Make More Placements podcast live here in the Facebook Make More Placements Facebook community. So today we're going to cover in the 5 stages of the hiring manager buyer journey and why each stage requires a different approach. Again, if you're listening to this on YouTube or iTunes or Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, remember to subscribe as well so you get a notification every time we release a new episode. So look, let's dive right in. So 5 stages of the hiring manager buyer journey and why each stage requires a different approach. So last week, we done a session on why, the vast majority of recruitment and search business owners, the vast majority of the business development they do gets ignored. And one of the things we sort of touched on in that episode was the 5 stages of awareness, right? So the 5 stages of awareness taken from a book called Breakthrough Advertising, right? So this whole episode, our whole philosophy on this has been adapted from that. And just to quickly sort of recap on that, we've got the 5 different stages. We've got completely unaware, right? So these are prospects who don't know they have a problem. We've got problem aware. So these prospects who know they have a problem but don't yet know what the solution is. We've got solution aware. So they know that there are solutions to their problem, but they don't yet know how. Don't yet know that you could provide that solution. We've got product aware. So they know about your service, know that you could provide a solution. And we've got most aware, which is when they're on the edge of buying, right? So we touched on that last week. I'm going to go into a bit more detail on the different stages today and how, I guess more importantly, how you should approach each stage differently, right? Because I think one of the I guess roadblocks for you right now, one of the biggest game changers is, especially as the economy shifts, right? Especially when we're in a contracting economy, if you're only speaking to prospects at a certain level of awareness, you're going to miss out on everybody else, right? So our goal for you as a recruitment or search business owner is you want to be the first person your prospect thinks of when they're ready to buy. The reality is, though, depending on what market you're in, the vast majority of your prospects won't be ready to buy today, right? It's going to be ready to buy in the future, right? So the big mistake that a lot of recruiters make is they're only communicating to now buyers, people are ready to buy now. All of their content, all of their messaging, all of their outreach is all targeting people who have vacancies right now. And when it's a buoyant market, when there's lots of vacancies in the market, that's fine and it works really well. When perhaps demand slows down a little bit and there's less now buyers and more future buyers, we need to have a different approach, right? So if you can get this right, what it will give you is more market share, more awareness more awareness for your service in the market. And essentially what it means is that you will have a flow of business that comes to you, flow of inbound leads, inbound inquiries, business that comes to you, from the work you're doing in the background, rather than just waiting on the now buyers, right? And one of the big problems with waiting on just now buyers, that's where you got the most competition, right? We have, almost every recruiter in the market going after the now buyers. There's a smaller number of now buyers, there's more competition there, whereas we've got a big group of future buyers that are, for the most part, being ignored by most recruiters. So if you can sort of shift your marketing, again, I'm not saying to ignore the now buyers, but if we can include the future buyers as well, it gives you this sort of endless stream of demand for your recruitment or search services, which obviously means, more sales, more appointments, more sales opportunities with hiring managers, and ultimately more revenue, higher profits, more placements, which is what we're in the game for. Terry, anything you wanna add to that before we dive in?
Yeah, I just want to go back a bit and full disclosure. This concept is from a gentleman by the name of Eugene Schwartz, who's considered one of the greatest copywriters of all time. And he wrote several books. I think he wrote something like 12 books, but he wrote ultra successful ad man, and he earned millions of dollars throughout his career. And a book I'd recommend to all of you, though you may think it's a bit alien, one of his books is called Breakthrough Advertising, and it's considered one of the best marketing books of all time. That's Breakthrough Advertising. So I would be absolutely clear on this and completely transparent. We haven't just sort of come up with this concept. This concept's been around since, to my knowledge, the early 50s, this whole concept. And I say from one of the leading copywriters in the world ever, quite frankly. So worth getting the book Breakthrough Advertising. So I just wanted to share and give a bit of background as to where all this comes from, Drew. Nothing else to add at this stage.
Perfect. So I want to sort of dive right in. I want to sort of address each stage one at a time, give you some examples from each stage, and more specifically talk about the type of content or type of marketing or type of outreach that we need to be using at each stage. So hopefully you can adapt that into your business, right? So we'll start with number 1, which is unaware. So these are hiring managers who that they have a problem in their business, right? But they're unaware they have a problem, right? So perhaps there's one example I can give is that they're perhaps a CEO and they manage a sales team, and the sales team, their current performance, they're currently converting at every 1 out of every 10 sales meetings they convert into a sale, right? So the conversion rate is 10%, but the industry average is 30%. And in order for that CEO to hit their business objectives, they need to be converting at 30%, right? So, but the CEO's at a place where he or she can't yet see that, right? So there's a problem in the business, problem in the organization that recruitment can solve, or recruitment can provide a solution for, but the CEO is unaware, or the hiring manager is unaware of this, right? That's stage one, where we have prospects who from the outside looking in, we know that we can help. We know that we've got clients probably working with already who we've already helped, who were in a similar situation, who already helped. But the hiring manager or the CEO, wherever it is at the moment currently unaware they have that problem. Terry, can you give us a few more examples on that, or anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think that's a great example, the sales one there. I'll give you two more examples. Often when we talk to the owners and directors of recruitment and search firms who work on contingent, and what they will say is, we will fill between 20 and 40% of the job orders that we work on. And their attitude is, I've been in the industry for 10, 20 years, and that's the industry norm. And it is the industry norm for contingent recruiters. But often contingent recruiters aren't aware that a retained recruiter's fill rate is about 85, 90%. So again, there's the challenge, but majority of contingency recruiters wouldn't be aware of that. So as far as they're concerned, hey, Terry, we're at the top end. We're doing 40, 50% of the roles that we work on, we're filling. By the way, it does mean that 50% of the time you're working, you're not getting paid. So their argument is, Terry, things are absolutely great here because we know we've got a 50% success rate. Unaware of the problem, I haven't even considered the fact that 50% of the time they're working, they're not getting paid. I used to work in IT, and I recruited within IT, is my background, and I work predominantly with retailers within the IT department. So another example, Drew gave the example of sales, we gave an example of contingent recruiters. Another example would be, let's say, a CEO of a major retailer where they've got some IT projects to deliver that they need to deliver to give them that edge and keep up with the competition. But what they don't know right there and then is that they're behind the timetable, or they're over budget. So again, if you were to talk to the CEO, they say, yeah, everything's fine, we'll work on this project or whatever, but not yet aware that they have a problem and they're going behind the timescales or over budget is another example for IT. So there's a couple of examples, Drew, as where they are unaware of the problem.
No, 100%. And sometimes they're just not consciously aware as well. Sometimes even just you asking the question, if someone's working on a project and you ask the question to the hiring manager, or you put content out that asks the question, do you think you'll hit your targets with the current team you have in place? And a lot of times, often the time's going to be no, right? But they weren't aware until you've asked the question, they haven't been consciously aware of that, right? So just in terms of the sort of different content that you want to put out, or different messaging or outreach you want to put out to people who are in the stage of unawareness, we want to be using content or using language that highlights the problem, or highlights the gap, or highlights the missing piece that they may not be aware of, or at least brings it to a certain level of consciousness, right? So, for example, again, just before we started this podcast, I was on Instagram, and I can't remember what account it was, but a video came up and it said it was an accountant, right, or a tax professional based in the UK, and the video started, is it possible to sell a business for £1 million and not pay tax, right? So, and then obviously the answer is yes, and he sort of demonstrated how it was possible by certain tax structures, right? So I don't know if it's if that's valid or not. So I'm not talking about the advice itself, right? I'm just talking about how I wasn't aware that you could do that, right? So suddenly that video has now made me, taken me from unaware that it was even possible to problem aware, right? Whereas if I'm going to sell my business for £1 million, I now know that it is possible to do that without paying tax, right? So we want to put out content, put out outreach that highlights the problem, or brings it to a level of consciousness. Terry, anything you want to add to that?
No, that's a great terminology there. Bringing it to a level of consciousness is a great Great way of looking at it.
Perfect. Then we got stage two, which is problem aware, right? So these are people who, they've moved from unaware to problem aware. So they are now aware that there is a problem in their business or their department, or the problem that in their performance, right? Or you've brought it to a level of consciousness, as I was just saying, right? So, again, going back to the CEO with a sales team example, this is a CEO who knows that the sales team isn't performing at the level that they need to be, or knows that the team they have in place, it could just be about team size rather than performance. The team they have in place isn't enough for whatever reason for them to hit their objectives and targets, right? So that's problem aware. They're aware that there's something that needs to be done about that. Terry, anything you want to add to that, or any examples you can give just to add?
Yeah, so you talked about the sales team, you talked about, and I talked about the IT team. So now the CEO, maybe the CTO, is aware there's a problem with these IT projects. So they're aware that there is now a problem. You gave the example there, which I thought was a great example, where you could sell a business for $1 million and not pay any tax on it. So you're now aware of what's going on. So they're thinking, right, I need to get this project delivered on time, or I need to improve my sales. And at the moment, our conversion is 10%. I'm now aware that the industry norm is 25%. 25% of sales meetings convert into raising an invoice for this particular CEO that's managing the sales team. So that's number two. Number three is solution aware. Where they're going, right, we're aware of the problem. So number three is, what's the solution to this problem? So going back to the solution for the CEO with the sales team, the CEO, she may now say, actually, maybe we ought to improve our training, or maybe just get some training in the first place. If we could optimize the performance of our sales team and get them to 20, 30%, that's perhaps one of the solutions. Maybe it's the management of the team. Maybe it's a sales script. Maybe it's our offering in the case of the CEO with the sales team. If it's the CTO and they're now aware, now they might be saying, actually, maybe we need to look at our budget. Maybe we need to look at the methodologies we're using to ensure that we deliver these projects on time. But they're now aware that some of the solutions, and one of those solutions may well be why they should use you. Maybe we need to bring in more expertise into our IT team. Maybe we need to bring more expertise into the sales team, or whether it is. Does that make sense, Drew?
It does. It makes perfect sense. And when a prospect is at this stage, can you imagine from prospect's point of view, there's a lot of noise, right? There's a lot of, they're aware of the problem, right? Which is, means that we can, I guess, be a bit more direct with the outreach, with the marketing, but they've got so many different possible paths they can go down in terms of solution, right? They've got other recruiters they can work with, but they've got, as Terry said, they've got training they could use. There's different solutions that they can have, right? So part of our content, part of our outreach needs to be demonstrating why your solution, your particular solution, again, I'm talking about recruitment here rather than your business, your path of solution is better than training. Why is it better to bring someone in rather than train your current team? Or why is it better to bring someone in rather than change the sales script, or whatever it happens to be, right? Because it's going to be, it's obviously going to differ from business to business or sector to sector. But that's where we shift the marketing or the content we're putting out to talk more about, we're almost trying to sell your version of the solution. Terry, does that make sense?
Perfect sense, yeah.
So that brings us on to number four. So once we sort of conquer this stage, they become product aware, right? They are now, they're not only aware of the problem, they're now aware of, not only aware of the problem, not only aware of the solution, now aware of your product, right? They know that recruitment is a possible solution. They know that you offer a recruitment service. They know that, you're possibly talking to other recruiters, but they know that they're sort of on the verge of, making that decision whether they use a recruiter or not. Terry, anything you want to, I guess, any examples you can give there, anything you want to add?
Yeah, so first to add, they know of you, but here's the challenge that you've now got. They also know of your there's a good chance they're going to know of your direct competitors. So it's not a case of they just know of you. They're now thinking, yeah, there's Fred Blogs & Co. executive recruitment, but there's also a dozen other guys that can help solve this problem. So now your message to these individuals is slightly different because they know of you and they're thinking, why would I work with you rather than your competitors? And one of the things that you want to be looking at here in particular is something called social proof. I'll just quickly explain what I mean by social proof. If you imagine that you visit a town, you're there on a conference, and you get into your hotel, and you check in, you think, right, I'm going to go out for a meal, and you go into the main town centre, and you're looking for a restaurant, and there are two restaurants there. One is absolutely packed, and there's a queue of people waiting outside to get in, and the other restaurant, which is next door to this very busy restaurant, there's half a dozen people inside, and nobody queuing to get in. Now, what will happen is what you're more likely to do is you're likely to choose the restaurant that looks busy and there's a queue of people getting in. And social proof is a term, it's an example of social proof. It was a term that was coined back in, I think back in the 70s, in a book by Robert Cialdini called Influence. And well, basically what it says is that as people, we copy the actions of others in the attempt to eliminate behavior in certain situations. So to help us make a decision, we'll look at what other people are doing and that will influence us. Now, what's all this going to do with your business? Well, if you can provide the hiring manager that's now product aware with social proof, evidence that you can solve his or her problem, that's going to make a massive difference and give you quite an advantage over your competitors. Because if you think about it from a hiring manager's point of view, they're inundated with phone calls and emails from recruiters every day of the week. It's estimated that the average hiring manager gets 6 calls per day, every day from recruiters, all promising the earth. How do they know who to go to? Because most recruiters say very much the same thing. Just for a moment, imagine if you had video testimonials or written testimonials from hiring managers in a very similar sector and you'd solve their problem, what that would mean to that potential client that you want to talk to. Does that make sense, Drew?
It does. It makes perfect sense, and I think here as well, like this, like I said at the beginning, this is where there probably is the most competition, which is why testimonials are so important. Why social proof is so important because, like Terry said, because they're now aware of the again, not even what Terry said, right? Think about your average outreach right now, or the average time you speak to a hiring manager, they're probably speaking to multiple other recruiters, right? So, and every recruiter says to their best, they talk about how much experience they've got, about how many candidates they've got in database and all that sort of stuff, right? Which is, the right thing to do. But the only way they're going to be able to separate you from everybody else is not by what you say, but it's by what your past clients and candidates say, which is why testimonial social proof becomes so important at this stage. And I think, if you can get this right, it won't matter. Number one, if we can get the sort of stages 1 to 3 right, the key thing is that your hiring manager will come to you first before they go to anybody else, right? So we can actually cut out a lot of the competition. But second thing is that even if they have the competition here, you're going to set yourself up apart from the competition because you're going to be the one that's got the past clients, past candidates who are saying how good you are rather than just you saying it. Because when you say it, you sound like every other recruiter, and quite frankly, it's everything you say is going to be taken with a pinch of salt. Everything you say is going to be, they're going to assume that you're going to sort of big yourself up. They're going to assume that you're going to say you're the best because that's what you should do as the owner of the business. You should believe that about your own service. But it's a lot better when you've got people who are, perhaps their colleagues, perhaps their peers, their peers in their career who are saying that you are the best or that you've helped them solve the exact problem that hiring manager's got right now.
Yeah, great point there.
Which brings us on to number 5, right? So get this right, you get to number 5, which is the 5th and final stage, which is most aware. When they're most aware, that effectively is when they've already made their buying decision, and it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when, right? So they've already made the buying decision, pretty much. They're going to use a recruiter. They may even have made a decision to use you, but and again, you probably had this where a prospect is delaying on making a decision for everybody. They're delaying on pulling the trigger, right? So in their head, and you are probably now as a prospect, right, in that situation right now where you're going to buy from somebody, you want to use their service, but it's a matter of when. The timing needs to be right. So perhaps got holiday coming up, or you've got other things you want to do first before you buy from them, and you keep delaying that decision, right? And again, a lot of your prospects are going to sit right here, right? Because it's a big investment. Recruitment's a big investment. Hiring someone's a big investment, especially again. Sometimes sometimes, especially if you're contingency, they may even have made a decision to use your service already, but they're not making a decision to hire. So maybe they're even interviewing candidates, but not pulling the trigger on the hiring stage as well. So it can happen at different stages depending on whether you're retained or contingency. But here's where we need to sort of put more content out or communicate them in a way that gives them incentives to buy now, incentives to act now. Terry, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think you've raised a really good point there that I'm sure will resonate with contingent recruiters, where you've worked with a hiring manager and they said, this is the type of person that we're looking for. And they're interviewing, but they actually haven't made the decision to hire. But look at it from your point of view. Here you are doing this work, but they're still not 100% sure that they're going to hire. And we've all been there as a contingent recruiter where you do all that work. And as far as you're concerned as a recruiter, it's like, yeah, I've got 3 of my candidates down to final stage. It's just a matter of who they're going to take on. But in fact, the hiring manager hasn't pulled the trigger and hasn't made that decision. And the amount of times I've spoken to contingent recruiters where they say, I feel really silly because I did all that work and a lot of hard work. And then for whatever reason, through no fault of the recruiter, that assignment's then pulled, where the hiring manager comes back and says, "Oh, we're going to put this on hold." Typically we're going to put this on hold, and you're now thinking, "Shoot, I did all that work; it was a complete waste of money." And that's what's going on there, where they don't bring in anybody, and they say that things. Because in fairness, you're not always going to get the absolute 100% truth from the hiring managers. In particular on contingent, where there's no commitment from the hiring manager, it makes no difference then whatsoever whether you and half a dozen of your competitors work on that job order. It's no impact on them at all. And if you're accepting that, that's what's happening 50, 40, 60% of the time. So, and this is where most of your competition is, well, at this stage, where they're most aware. This is where the world and his wife is now there competing for that business. And the whole point about all this is that for most recruiters, they're engaging with a hiring manager at this level where the hiring manager says, yeah, actually, I'm glad you cold called me because I am looking for somebody right now. But think about that. If you're only targeting those individuals where they're saying, we're looking right now, first of all, you've got more competition than ever. So they'll probably said that to half a dozen of your competitors already. And quite frankly, you're probably too late to the game because there's going to be situations where the hiring manager says, yeah, we're looking right now. And this is the job spec. And if you know anybody, send them through. But if 2 or 3 of your competitors got that same job order a week, 2 weeks, a month before you kind of know what's going to happen there. And you will argue, but it's worth taking a punt on it. I would suggest maybe it isn't, because if they've got a head start on you, it is literally like going into a boxing ring with both hands tied behind your back.
Yeah.
But think about it, if you could get to speak to the hiring manager at the earlier stages, where the ideal stage where they don't even know they've got a problem, but you're already starting the conversation with them and highlighting some of the problems they could be having as an example. Thoughts on that, Drew?
No, yeah, 100% agree. I think, look, what we see from most crews in the market is they're only communicating to people, as Terry said, about stage 4 and 5, maybe 3. The best sort of possible, the best thing you can do right now in this current, the current climate, and then really any climate, but more so now, is, rather than just communicating to now buyers and just looking for people with vacancies right now and looking for people that are hiring right now, is look at your market as a whole, and I guess accept the fact that not everyone's going to buy right now, but there's a lot of people in your market who have a problem that you can solve. They have a problem that you can solve, right? Not all of them are aware of that they have a problem, but they do, right? So if we start looking at, how can we get in early? How can we get our foot in the door first before they are ready to hire? Build these relationships, build and maintain these relationships now, so that when they are ready to pull the trigger, we are the first and ideally only person they think of, right? And you probably have people that you buy, people who you follow, who are influencers in whatever sector you're in right now, who are like that for you, right? Who, if you need an accountant or you need a bookkeeper or you need a cleaner or you need a estate agent or whatever it is, you have someone that you think as I say those different industries, someone that you think of first, even though you're not in the market for them right now, right? You want to be in that situation with your hiring managers. So they have a board meeting or someone hands in a notice, straight away it's, you, right? And if it's not you, it's going to be somebody else, right? And you may still get an opportunity to pitch, but you're going to be late to the party, right? If you're first, we have a better opportunity of, even if you stick to contingency, right? you get there first. You can work on the role first. You've got a lot higher chance of filling it. But in an ideal world, we can get there exclusive or we can get there retained. But we need to be first to the party. Is there anything you add before you wrap up?
No, not at all. You summed it up really well there. So just to recap, the 5 stages, as I said, the concept comes from one of the greatest copywriters of all time, Eugene Schwartz, in his book Breakthrough Advertising. So the 5 stages are: 1, unaware, because they don't even know that they have a problem. 2, they're now aware they have a problem. It's called problem aware. They know they have a problem, but they don't know what the solution is. 3 is solution aware. So now they know the solution but they don't know yet that you could provide that. So it's at this stage the hiring manager is doing the research. 4 is product aware. So they know about your service and that of your competitors as well. So they know the example they could use a recruiter. And 5, most aware. This is when they're on the edge of buying. And it's important you communicate with your prospects at each stage differently, so that your message resonates with that hiring manager, where you're highlighting there could be a problem here. You're highlighting some of the solutions. You're highlighting your services. What it means is you will not be ignored when they're ready to pull the trigger on this. Anything to add to that, Drew?
Nothing to add. What I would say though is, obviously we put these podcasts on for free. So if you are a recruitment associate and listening to this, I want you to think about anyone else you know in this industry who could also benefit from these shows, right? So, and I know I would ask you just as a favor to share it with them, right? Share this episode or any other episodes that you listen to with anyone else who works within recruitment and search sectors, who you think could benefit from the content we put out. But yeah, we'll speak with you soon. Be back with another episode next week. But until then, take care, take action, and be relentless.
Cheers, folks. Thanks a lot, Drew.